thesis is building your research network. So I think it's kind of a natural segue from what we just completed. So my name is Ifeoma Wogu, and I'm an associate professor in the Computer Science and Engineering department at the University at Buffalo SUNY. I too was one of the first cohorts of the CI Fellowship in 2010-11. So Aruna and I were in the same cohort. And like she said, and you guys will be saying this in a few years, it's an amazing program. You will be very, very appreciative of this time. And hopefully I could share some of just how this has affected my career trajectory, essentially. So I will pass the mic on to Dr. Bill Grope, and he will introduce himself, followed by Dr. Pinkston, and then we will get right into it.
All right. Okay, and let's see if my lapel mic works. Good, okay, great. So really pleased to be here. I'm Bill Grope. I'm currently a professor of computer science and the director of the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Unlike many of the speakers so far this day, I have not been at the same place my entire career. I spent the first 8 years as an assistant and then associate professor at Yale, and then I was part of the Mathematics and Computer Science Division at Argonne National Laboratory for 17 years. So I'm experienced different parts of our community. I have not worked in industry directly, but the labs are an interesting intermediary point. Before I discuss a few things that we came up with as ways to build your research career, I do want to provide a little bit of context here. I think one of the things you really need to keep in mind as we're talking is that you have to put this in the context. Everything is different. I was really happy to hear the discussions about the challenges, particularly of pursuing interdisciplinary research before tenure. It's not that you shouldn't do it, but I think one of the most important things is to understand both how your field works in your discipline and how your organization, your department or unit in which you're working, how they work, what they value, how they promote, and so forth. So don't sort of take this and work in isolation. You need to put that in the context of your institutions. And for the obligatory joke, us adults often ask children what they want to be when they grow up. Do you know why we do that? We are looking for ideas. All right, so as you're thinking about building your research network, one of the things to understand is why are you interested in building your research network? One of the reasons is to connect to people who are doing related work. And that's both, the positive bit is so that you're open to collaborations, but you need to understand your competition. I've seen a number of sad cases where people have gone off and done stuff that other people were also doing and maybe even doing better. Make sure that what you're doing is distinctive. And so building your research network is a way to build awareness, which is important in succeeding. And the other reason is to connect to people who are doing different work, where that partnership can help bring new ideas together. And that's not necessarily to do interdisciplinary work. It might mean to bring awareness of new tools that you can apply to your own work. So for example, I've seen a lot of value in the last decade with people becoming much more familiar with statistical techniques than what they were trained in. They don't go off and do interdisciplinary work in statistics, rather they apply that statistics to the work that they are doing. There are lots of things in that direction. And then the other thing to do is to understand how you prefer to work. And that's one of the things that I've been learning in my career. So do you want to be the top of the pyramid? Do you want to be part of a larger team? And when I say that, you can be part of a larger team, but for promotion to tenure, you'll have to be the lead of some sub-area within that. But it's still a different work environment than being the sole top of that pyramid. So to get into some of these ideas that we've put here, one of the things to do is to attend talks, particularly in fields that are not directly related to your own. That's a great way to look at how people have addressed the research that they're doing, get a different perspective. Again, it's a great way to be exposed to different approaches. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in science have come from people bringing ideas from different fields into their own field. So look at it from that way, just as to explore and have that breadth. Another thing is to meet with the speakers at these events and feel, we don't, well, I shouldn't actually say that. Some of them do bite. Most of us don't, though. And so take your chances, come up and ask for advice. Throw some ideas out there. Usually, we love talking to the future. So you guys are the future. So take advantage of that. I think another thing that Jim said, when we go into these meetings and give talks, we're not just here to hear ourselves speak. We're here to network, and not just with the people we know. The most fun is talking with people that we've never met before. That's one of the things I think is really wonderful about our field. Another thing that I'm very passionate about and has been very important in my career is to take advantage of service to build collaborations. And that can be in many, many different areas. Being part of conference committees, starting from the bottom, showing a willingness to work with the community and build awareness is really important. Taking advantage of opportunities in professional societies to connect with people with similar interests is also important. Doing things that come up in your own area. So I volunteered to be our representative for a project building the Intel supercomputer about the same time as the N-Cube that turned into the Paragon. That was a lot of extra travel, but it connected me to people that were very instrumental in my career. And the last one that I wanted to talk about before turning it over to Timothy, let me give you the heads up. There are lots of opportunities to build those research networks with your students. I was about to say through your students, but that's the wrong way to think about it. It really is with your students. So I'm personally aware of the programs that the Department of Energy has. They have some wonderful programs, not just for graduate students, but also for undergraduates. My own son took part in an undergraduate program at Oak Ridge, where one weekend he had the world's most powerful supercomputer to his private self as he was optimizing some code. It was an opportunity that changed his career. But there are also great opportunities for graduate students, and those often connect you to researchers in the labs. Other agencies have similar sorts of programs. We often talk about when we're building collaborations that students are the glue. It's a really important glue, and you should take advantage of it. And it's also, by the way, great for the students because it gives them, it helps them start their research networks. It also exposes them to different organizations in different ways that they do things. And with that, let me turn it over to Timothy.
Thank you, Bill. So a little bit about me. I'm Timothy Pinkston, professor of electrical and computer engineering and a vice dean, the vice dean for faculty affairs. So I'm the guy who helps the departments to find talent, to recruit the talent, and to make hires, and then of course to mentor and develop careers, go through the promotions process, basically the whole career arc of faculty. And my research area has been in the computer architecture area, expertise on the interconnection network and data movement aspects of computer architecture. And I've been at USC since since all of you were born, except for a few people here, Mark. In '93, I started there, and along the way, spent all my career after PhD at USC. I had some stints at IBM and at Hughes Research Labs before. But I'd also had a 3-year stint at the National Science Foundation as a program director for the Hardware Software Foundation's area of CCF, Computer Communications Foundation. And I was the program director for the computer systems architecture area in particular. But in the last couple of years, or at least a year and a half, I've served as the founding inaugural lead program director for the Expeditions in Computing program. And for those of you who heard something about that yesterday, we made 4 inaugural awards, one of which was in the software-defined networks area. Another was on computational sustainability to move that field forward. And another was on molecular programming, project to how to program molecules to do computing. And so that was, I found that to be a useful experience. The goal, what's the goal? So we're talking about building networks. Thank you, Bill, for giving that context at the beginning. And I'm sorry I missed the previous panel, and I'm sure you all were captivated by Mark's opening talk, which I also missed, but he'll fill me in later. What's the goal? The goal is to do excellent work that's impactful to the field, to make a difference in the world, and hopefully to enhance people's lives and the society and the world in which we now live. And so that's the ultimate goal. Sub-goals are, you first need to get a good position, post CIFellows, and then of course to then progress through and be successful as an academic. Hopefully most of you will choose that, and progress through the ranks. And so for that, if you are hired on the tenure track, it's also very laudable to be on a teaching track or research track position. But if you aren't hired on the tenure track, then what's needed for you to get promoted with tenure is to become recognized as a rising star in the field. Then of course, to be promoted from associate to full, then you need to actually be a star, be a leader in the field. So how do you become a rising star in the field? Obviously, you'd want to produce good students and produce good work and on all those things. And so this panel on building your research network is one of the things that can help facilitate that, right? And so building your research network is not only about socializing or becoming, getting to know others or becoming known by others. It's mainly about a multi-way communication exchange of ideas, of thoughts. It's about recognizing and being recognized. It's about being, as Bill said, being aware and making others aware of you, it's about standing up and about being a standout in some ways as well. So this is a mechanism for that. So I'm going to say a few things. You see TP, that's Timothy Pinkston, what's that?
I said, I thought I removed the
No, that's fine. That's fine. Now they know who's talking about what. And so,
little phase error.
I'll say a few things, and I'll capture it by the why and the what for, and because there's always want to do things for a purpose. And then there's mechanics of it, right? So the why and the what for. Attend and present conferences, present at conferences, workshops, and meetings. Why? What for? Well, it's important to be plugged in, not to be siloed, to understand what is good work, right? To be exposed to good work, to see related work in your, in your research area, and also to know who's doing that work, and of course to help have others to get to know you, in that you are a player in doing that, doing work in that area. So it's about gaining visibility. You want to gain visibility as an emerging expert in the field, a rising star, amongst other peers who are also trying to become rising stars. It's not a zero-sum game. Everybody can be rising stars, right? All of you will someday be up here, as in FOMA is, right? That's a case example. And so that's the why and the what for. The mechanics. So you'd want to perhaps focus on a few of the key conferences. It could be mini conferences, but you have so much bandwidth, right? Focus on some key conferences, read papers. So attend those sessions that are most relevant to your area. Of course, you can attend others that are outside to gain breadth, but attend those that are most relevant to your area. Read some papers in those areas before the presentation. And then after the presentation, during Q&A, ask questions. And when you ask the questions, get to the microphone, state clearly your name and your affiliation. We want people to know who you are, where you're from, and to connect the face to the name and the thoughts, right? And so to do that, be sure to do that. I remember Shubhu Mukherjee, you remember Shubhu, he would always ask questions, always, after every session in computer architecture, and everybody knew Shubhu, right? And so that's, do that. It's just nothing wrong with doing that. Oh, he was your student? There you go. So you trained him well. Speak with the presenters after the sessions. Speak with them throughout the breaks, right? Be accessible when you give talks for people to talk with you, and when they're asking you questions, be willing to give as much information as you can to show excitement. You are the expert in your talk, in your area. Show the excitement, have it to be infectious, and approach at least a dozen people that you don't know. Whatever conferences you go to, you see the people that you know, speak with them, that's great. People who you don't know, at least a dozen people, go introduce yourselves to them. All right, how am I doing for time?
Oh, I wasn't timing you.
Oh, but I just want to know, because that's the item one. I can go on to the next one, and I can be briefer as well. Okay, gotcha. Collaborate through service. That's item, which one is that?
Phase error
7.
Putting these all together.
Item 7.
Yeah.
So why in the what for purpose? It's an opportunity for you to get a sense of the lay of the land. Okay, so whatever the service is. So first of all, try to identify what are the areas of a service that you think you can do well at performing, so it's an opportunity for you to get a sense. It gives you an insider's view of how decisions are being made, right? And to sort of see how the sausage is made, as they say. Understand how others think and allow others to see how you think, right? Become aware of the past, the current, and the future trajectory of things going on in the field in that particular service area, right? That's the why and what for. The mechanics. Okay, first you want to identify those professional service activities that you think you can do well, and then make leaders of those service activities to know that you're interested and available to work and do that service. So what kind of service things? Proposal, NSF proposal review panels, conference organizing committees, workshop organizing committees. And it doesn't have to be a program, technical program committee. That's great if it is, but it can be publicity chair or web chair or any other things, so that you are a part of the decision making and the organizing of things. External review person. So this provides an opportunity for you to, again, to get plugged in, to get visibility. Again, so the big goal is to, as I said, multi-way communication, exchange of ideas and thoughts, recognizing, be recognized, becoming aware, and standing up and being a standout. So these are things that could be done there. The next one?
Sure.
All right, the next one, thank you.
Actually, maybe we could kind of go around.
Okay,
And then
okay.
come back around. Should we do that?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. So,
Yeah, I did introduce myself a little bit. Thank you, Bill and Tim. Yeah, those are definitely very good points as far as building our research network. So I'll say a little bit about my kind of trajectory, which is very different from everybody else's, and then, share a few points from the perspective of a past CI fellow. So I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering in Nigeria. And then I think it was Jim who said he went to grad school because of his girlfriend. I chose to go to grad school because of my boyfriend then, who was in New York City. And so I put a compass and I traced a radius around New York City, and Philadelphia was where I could go. So I went to University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, which was SEPTA, one train station away from where he lived. My parents this is not being recorded, is it? Okay, so many years later, my parents still have no idea. And so that was how I ended up in grad school. I finished, and at that time, there was a lot of jobs, just like now. And so even though I was in a lab, in a GRASP lab, which is like the most incredible place at Penn, I dropped out because I had a phenomenal job where they were offering me a lot of money, and I felt I could get married soon and go a very different trajectory from where I am today. And so I took a job in Boston. I worked there for 6 years. Things didn't work out the way I thought they would, but I did get married and then went to Buffalo with my husband. My husband, he works in a cancer center. He's an oncologist, cancer oncologist, and he does a lot of programs with Nigeria. And his job in Buffalo supports his projects back in Nigeria a lot. And so I didn't realize that getting married, that I was going to be in Buffalo till death do us part. And so I stayed on, so I went back to grad school. I did my PhD at the University at Buffalo because I had to have, again, my compass and a radius that I couldn't go outside a certain radius. We didn't want to live apart. We made that decision. And so on graduating and becoming a CI fellow, part of the requirements was you couldn't be a CI fellow in your own institution. I don't know if that's still the requirement. And so again, I took my compass and I said, all right, which research institutions are 50, 60 miles around Buffalo? University of Rochester was incredible. And there was this professor, Chris Brown, he's retired now. He was incredible in computer vision. And so I sent word to him. We talked about the kind of work I was doing. At that time, I was trying to see if we could use probabilistic ontologies to define images for scene understanding, for image understanding, which was a very nice problem then. But today, when you see what deep learning does with the kinds of things we were trying to do, it just blows that kind of work out of the water. So yesterday I totally digressing. I saw a student doing Bayesian analysis or some work in Bayesian, and I was so excited to see his poster because no one really is doing that anymore. For the kind of work we're doing, we're not doing Bayesian. So it was nice to go back to my roots in that sense. But anyhow, I did my postdoc at University of Rochester, took some time, was a research scientist, and then became an assistant professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And I really learned a lot about technology and hands-on work at RIT. And then came back to the University at Buffalo. So I've just been in a very small radius. So even though I haven't been in one place for 30 years, I've been in a little radius moving around that. And today I do more like computational psychology / affective computing. And I want to go do a degree in psychology when I get my sabbatical eventually, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to get away with that. So that's my long story of how I've gone around. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg that said, for a lot of us women, we don't climb the career ladder, we're in a jungle gym. And that's kind of how I feel, like I've been all over the place. Yeah, so talking about, coming back to topic on building your research network. One thing I kind of want to also piggyback on what Bill and Timothy had shared is conferences. I think conferences are huge, and we can't say enough about our computing field. Conferences mean a lot to us because the turnaround of research is so fast, and we're pushing things out there so quickly. In other fields, even electrical engineering, they write journals. I'm working with students from mechanical engineering. They prepare journals, they go through the whole review cycle. It's a lot more sane, in my own opinion. In our work, where constantly you have to be like on your tiptoes, pushing your work out there. And so you want to be at those conferences, you want to be known, you want to see people, you want them to recognize you, you want to be able to ask the questions. For a few of us who are moms or who have otherwise I don't want to say responsibilities, but things that keep us a little more at home, I'm excited about the idea of virtual conferences. So one of the few things that came out of COVID was the fact that we've all gone virtual. We're teaching virtually, we're attending conferences, interviewing faculty, the whole 9 yards, we could go virtual. And so if you can, even if you can't go physically, attend virtually, but be a presence there. It's so important. So what I really wanted to talk about was career workshops. I feel like those career workshops that the CRA, CCC, NSF, they organize, it's a life changer. For me, it has. It's really changed my career. So what these career workshops do is, first of all, they bring people that under normal circumstances you have no access to or very little access to. I'm looking at Anne here, she's the director of CCC. Wherever would you go that you'd be sitting 2 steps away from the director of the CCC? Ellen is there somewhere. So these people are the people who kind of shape our field. You're in the same room with them. Talk to them, ask questions, pose questions. I want to talk to Ellen about publications. I am so frustrated about publications in AI because they are just frustrating. You get me, right? And so we need help. We do. But this is where you're going to get access to having those conversations over lunch. Every time the email shows up in your inbox, and because they will continue to invite you for career workshops, go. Don't skip it. It was in a career workshop like this that I got to sit in the same room. There were about maybe 7 of us or so with program directors from the NSF. And they were telling us upfront, your career proposal, what should be in your career proposal? How should you think about your career proposal? And there was a lady who was asking about, she's, fearless and excited and she wants to do a lot of things. That's awesome, but think with your career proposal in mind. And I'm not saying everybody is going to get a career proposal, but what I loved about that career proposal was it gives you a way to think, like you have to think very clearly about your work for the next 5 years, your teaching work, your research, your outreach. You're going to integrate all of that, and you have to convince somebody very, very knowledgeable that they should buy into this plan. I think that's very, very valuable. So even if you don't write the career or get the career, think about the career. Think about your career proposal, essentially, because it's critical. But again, I digress, because the point I was trying to make was sitting in a room with the program officer talking about how to prepare my career proposal made a huge difference. One thing she said was, make sure you write up your summary, 1 page, very easy to read, mail it to your program officer, get a yes or a no. I did that, And she was in my program officer, and my program officer tore up my summary. He said, this is for the NIH. We don't fund this sort of thing in the NSF. He just said, this is psychology, which I'm interested in, and it seeped into my writing. And he killed it. But he killed it like in February. The career wasn't due till July. And so I had time to re-prepare, everything. I didn't send it back to him. But I knew what he was saying, because now I could connect it back to what the program officer had told me. She'd be very clear. What are your broader impacts? What's your technical contribution? How are you going to what's the story you're telling? And this is coming from the program officer directly. And there was another young lady there who had just received her career, and the two of them were going back and forth, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So that laid a foundation for me to have money to be able to hire students to be able to do good research. I would never have gotten all of that input without being in that room with the career officer. I'm here as what did we call ourselves? The cohort building committee for the CIFellows. It looks so good on my resume, on my CV when I write that. My chair is like, how did you get that position? Aruna did. Aruna and I met at a workshop like this many, many years ago. And we all went out to dinner. It was a bunch of us women, and we were talking. Yolanda Gills was kind of like the big sister in the group. And so we just got to know each other like one night, 2 nights. I don't even think we really kept in touch, but we remembered each other's names. And so when Aruna was contacted to be on this cohort committee, and they were like, who else could be on the committee? She's like, oh, Ifeoma. And so that's how I got to be here. We were giving some talks in my university, and I thought, Yolanda Adams should be awesome. That's how I reached out to her years and years later. She's like, I remember you. And then she came to give the talk. As I was listing, look, I needed to list my external reviewers. The people that you meet here, you make friends with, they are potential tenor evaluators for you. You have all of this access. All of that is building your research network. So I can't say enough about these kinds of workshops, and there will be more. I just got invited for one to participate, not as a speaker or anything, to go from associate to professorship. It's too early, but I couldn't go because I have other commitments. But I sent mail to Valerie. I was like, please, please, please don't delete me from the database. I really want to go. I just can't go this time. But those things are critical. You can't get enough, just enough intangibles from those kinds of things. And they help your research in very different ways.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So should I continue with the next one? So the next one would be reach out to authors. And I would say also be accessible to other authors. The why and the what for, what purpose. This goes, first of all, it goes both ways. It's an excellent opportunity to learn from seasoned researchers, and for seasoned researchers in the field to see you and see how you think. This can help improve your own work by reaching out to authors and seeing, talking in depth about their research, their methodology. So you're trying to almost learn again from people in the field, from a paper, but also you would want to offer some constructive criticism or constructive feedback to those authors. And again, they're seeing how you think, but also sees the value in you and potential collaborations that you might think that could develop. Be vulnerable. Send some papers that you're working on, perhaps, to them, so they can then see your work. Again, so this can create opportunities for fruitful collaborations. I would note that, except for the last year, when Jack Dungar received it, the 5 of the 6 last Turing Awards were given to collaborative teams. And so collaborations are good. So in terms of the mechanics, I'll just give my own personal story here. one of my principal collaborators is someone who I met at a conference, and I said, hey, I enjoy your work, and I'm doing some work in this area. Do you mind taking a look at my paper? And through that, I got some feedback from him, and we started to find mutual interesting projects to work on, and we've been very fruitful collaborators since. Again, so it's about just reaching out, being vulnerable, and taking those steps. In terms of inserting yourself in students' networks, I would say, Ifoma may talk more about that, but I'd like to talk about inserting yourself in your advisors' networks, in your peer networks. Why reinvent the wheel? Leverage existing relationships and networks of those close to you or closely related to your area. It's okay to name drop. Yeah, when you go to conferences, to say, hey, yeah, my advisor is this person, or yeah, I have to collaborate with that person. Again, you're meeting people who you haven't met before. It's okay to meet and mingle with people who you know, but again, make an objective to meet a dozen new people. And when you do so, try to facilitate those kind of conversations by things that you might share in common. And so those are, those are things I would say. I would like to give a shout out to several of you here who I've met in the past, and you've said, oh yes, we've met before, and you've given the context, right? And some people who've just come up to me, this is yesterday and today, who have come up to me and just introduced themselves to me. That's the thing to do at conferences, and because that's how you will then broaden and build your networks, doing some of the things that we mentioned before.
Yeah, let me touch on two things quickly. We had a little bit of a phase error, so I talked about a few things that I'm not listed for. I want to cover some of the things that I am. There's sort of a couple of things got added there. So one thing that has a WG there is an online presence. How you do that is going to really depend on your own personal preferences, but you need to be findable. When somebody looks for you, they need to be able to find you. There are lots of opportunities to take advantage of the modern online presence to get on a soapbox and be even more visible, but at the very least, you need to be findable. I'm surprised at how many people still, for example, don't have a Google Scholar page. That's like the absolute minimum. But you need a good website. You need a website that lists the people with whom you're collaborating. That's another way that you're findable through those connections. So that's important. And then to add a personal story too, sometimes there are, I think for a lot of us that have been privileged to be successful is because we were lucky. We got some good opportunities. And in my case, I had been working on some parallel computing systems. There was a workshop that was organized where a lot of us that were working on systems got together to talk about what we were doing. It was a great opportunity to meet with people that maybe I'd heard about, maybe they didn't even know, I didn't know them, they didn't know me. At the end of that, Ken Kennedy, we all said, gee, it's terrible, everything is hopeless. And Ken said, we've all agreed we can do this. So one part was that positive attitude. But having been given that example, some of us took it and took advantage of that, and that led to the message passing interface standard, which is still around today and is still the most effective way to program the massively parallel machines that we have. That was an amazing and lucky opportunity that I took advantage of. It would not have happened without a workshop, an in-person workshop, and one which allowed us to meet each other and talk to each other. And it was definitely one, just as Timothy said, there were a lot of people there that I didn't know, a lot of people who didn't know me. At the end of that workshop, we all knew each other. It was fantastic.
How are we doing for time for
We're
questions?
gonna,
You should probably go to questions, yeah.
Yeah. So I just very, very quickly, to follow what Timothy said about name dropping, just one last item I wanted to talk about was keynote speakers. As you all start your new jobs, one thing that will always happen would be very successful academics will come, whether from industry or from other institutions, will give keynote talks at your university. Usually, when somebody is giving a keynote talk, either virtually or in person, they have an agenda for the day. If it's related to your department, they open that agenda to you, and you sign up for like a 30-minute slot. Where you could meet with them, chat with them, totally cold contact. So often what I would do is, if I'm really interested in this person, I would take a slot, I'll go online, I'll research them a little bit, so that I can ask a few intelligent questions and just not come in to talk about myself. It's not about talking about me, it's about getting information from them. And so I had one of these situations with Maya Mantarik, who is a professor out in University of Southern California. She does social assistive robotics. And so I had all these questions prepared. I was going to ask about this and some work she did in deception. And she just took over the conversation. She talked, she asked me questions. You know, she was more interested in my work. And at the end of the conversation, she said, oh, these are some of my students that I think you would do great working with. And I thought, wow. And so I looked up these her students. One of them I could not find for the life of me, Chad. And I kept looking for anything that would have her name with somebody called Chad. And it was only afterwards I realized it was the Chad that spoke yesterday.
Yes.
Because his first name is not
Oldest.
Chad, it's Oldest. And I never made the connection. And so even now, but there was another student of ours who's now a full professor, and I find that there's a lot of overlap in our work. And so I have to go find Chad and say, hey, Maya thinks you're amazing. But those kinds of connections just don't come up without that kind of interaction with someone like a keynote speaker. And it's a one-on-one time. It's not at the conference where 200 people are waiting. It's just you. So I would say take advantage of those kinds of conversations.